Just stop it. The run-of-the-mill, cheesy, humdrum bullshit status quo just tires me out. What fascinates me are the industry disruptors, the superhuman frontiersmen or women who go through hell to achieve their goals. Join me as we meet and learn from those mavericks, rebels, and business leaders that aren't afraid to piss off the establishment in order to make radical change for good. Sponsored by Johto PR, the disruptive anti-PR firm that murders your competition with cinder blocks and cyanide. This is Disruption Interruption. Welcome back, everybody, to Disruption Interruption. I'm your host, KJ, and we're here today with another disruptor who has kicked up the dust on the status quo. He's been disrupting, I would say, all his life. He might say half his life as a brand strategist. We're talking to him today because he has deep experience in guiding companies, big companies in their transformation, like Marriott, Warner Brothers, Honeywell, but most importantly, in transforming himself. Coming to us live from Long Beach, California, please welcome our disruptor principal at Finian, Fabian Geyrhalter.
Well, thanks for having me. I'm looking forward to this. This should be fun. I want to make sure when you say I transformed myself that we don't get the wrong ideas. This is totally about my career.
That's right. I was going to say your alias too was, transformer, right? That takes it in a totally different realm, right?
Exactly. I like that.
But transformed your brand, right? Like talk the talk and walked the walk. So before we get into that, I want to know, because you've worked with all of these companies in transforming, you've disrupted your own industry. What is your main ingredient to disruption?
Well, the way you phrase it, I'm going to take this literal. What my main ingredient is, because I think it varies. Depending on if it's a large company, it might be very different, right? But I think for one person, shops, for innovators, for startups, I think there are three key ingredients. And the very first one is courage. I mean, you can't disrupt if you don't have guts, if you don't have moxie, because it takes so much usually to disrupt. It takes a lot from you, and you have to have the guts to actually say, you know what, I've been just coasting along and things were good, right? Like either you were doing something the same way all the time so it gets comfortable, even though you might not be super happy, it's comfortable, right? Or you see how things were being dealt with outside, right? Like how products behaved, how how services behaved and performed, and you're like, no, I'm going to disrupt this entire thing, and it's going to be extremely painful because it is, right? Disruption is supposed to hurt in the beginning for the one that is disrupting, right? And that leads me to my second point when I thought about this. It's determination, right? Like on the one hand, you have to have courage, but you have to be determined. You have to be determined to not give up and to get on the other side of things so that your disruption is actually successful, because otherwise, why do it, right? So there's a lot of perseverance, right? Because there's going to be roadblocks all along the way, right?
And arrows in your back and people telling you can't.
Like,
and this is the way it's always been done. And
well, yeah. And I mean, you might think you can disrupt easily, and it's never going to be easy, right? Because disruption is swimming against the stream, and it's going to take everything out of you. So I really think courage, determination, and perseverance are the three key ingredients to actually get to that point where you can disrupt.
Yeah, I agree with you. I don't know why this wouldn't be for major brands too. We have a lot of startups that are disrupting in the tech space that listen to this podcast, right? But they have aspirations and they're on run rates to be very big companies and go public. Some of them are on their, A, B, C funding and so forth that are on that way. But courage, I mean, you have to have guts, you have to have balls, you have to have cojones, right? All of them do.
You have to have balls, but when you have a serious C investment, that kind of helps, because suddenly it's not so ballsy anymore because you have less to lose, right?
Oh,
Suddenly
good
you
point.
can push a lot of money against everything. And you also, it's like the determination and perseverance part is always also a little bit gum, because at this point you've got teams, you can just manage them and say, now you are the one who has to make the phone
Series
calls.
A and Series B? So the courage and the determination, the perseverance cuts off after Series B.
I think once there's a good chunk of money behind you, you've got wind in your sails. And I think once you have wind in your sails, the courageous part, is just going with the weather and going with the storm and kind of like defending yourself, right? But it's not as courageous as actually jumping into that boat and making sure that you've got some wind in the sails, right?
Yeah.
So I think that beginning is always the really tough one.
It's a really good point. And disruptors like yourself, I mean, you're pioneers. You have to have courage to go out there and wow, I might get slaughtered by Indians any day now, right?
Yeah, I mean, you never know what's around the corner, and that is in a way the entrepreneurial spirit, and that's the excitement about it, right? Where you just don't know what happens if I open this door, but I really think I need to open this because the time is right.
What are we, like gluttons for punishment? I mean, we must be.
I think there's a little bit of that in there. Yeah,
we probably all went for the gold rush in our past lives, right?
Good pain.
So, all right. So you got to have balls. You got to be a determined cuss, as my dad would say, and you have to persevere, right? Tell me about this disruption, your own disruption in your own industry, in your own agency. Tell me a little bit about that, but don't forget to paint the status quo and why it needed to be disrupted and still does.
Well, let's start with the status quo, right? I used to run a brand agency. We were a small agency, I guess mid-sized for branding. We were anywhere between 12 and 18 people at the height. So it's a good size, small agency. And I created
80%. Well, that's 90% of the agencies out there today.
Most probably. Yeah, exactly. So it is kind of the status quo of agencies, right? That's the typical size between 5 and 10, maybe 15, right? That's kind of it. And then lots of freelancers and, interns, of course, they love interns, right? Which is part of the problem. And so I created an agency and we won tons of awards. And it was, of course, gloriously named after myself. It was Geyrhalter Design, right? Which later on turned into Geyrhalter & Co., because it needed to be a little bit more inclusive, and it wasn't just about design anymore. It was much more about brand strategy, etc. And we won the awards. I had the staff, I built my thing, and it was amazing to the outside. And I just realized over the last couple of years, it was just not very satisfying anymore. Like, even though everything looked better and better to the outside, and it's very much how agencies work, right? It's awards and glamour and all of that. And then once you lift a little bit of, that lid and you look inside of that glass, it's kind of mayhem. It's making sure that you constantly keep everyone happy. You keep, increasing your payroll. Demand is huge for talent. And of course, the most important thing is how you serve your clients, right? As an agency, you really have the goal to have long ongoing retainers.
Yeah.
Right. And the problem with retainers is, it's kind of like dating. In the beginning, it's super exciting, right? The first date, second date, it's big, right? It's the same thing with agencies and clients. In the beginning, it's strategy. Let's talk big ideas. Oh
Boom.
My God, you people are so smart. This is amazing, right? And then fast forward, half a year, and it's like, hey, I need to see that spreadsheet version 17, blah, blah, blah. And this is running behind, and this is going on, and la, la, la. And why are you not available after 6 p.m.? And we don't understand what's going on, right? And then fast forward a year or two, and clients start paying top dollars for project management and production that anyone could really do, and they should do themselves. And so what I saw was kind of like with my own agency, which was a little bit of a problem because it was, my agency. I started seeing what I kind of hated, right? That idea that, agencies, once they were actually, considered good agencies, decent sized agencies, they're turning more and more corporate. Everything becomes more rigid, right? And they're not swift. They're not agile. They're not like the clients that knock on their doors, which are, company founders and CMOs that just need to change things, and they need to change it quickly. And they need to have a core team that helps them with it. And they need to have experts, right? That actually know exactly what they're talking about. And as an agency, you're an expert in everything, because guess what? I'm going to take your money. I'm like, if you're my client, my whole goal is to get as much business out of you as possible. So if you say, hey, do you guys do websites? We're like, sure. But it's a really big e-commerce site. I mean, it's like a $500,000 project. It's like, sure, right? And that's the problem. The problem is that agencies are very hungry, right? They're hungry for more, and they're hungry for constant work. And so, long story short, is I kind of had it.
You said that's it.
Yeah.
What was the day that made you say that's it? Like, no effing more. I'm changing this.
There's usually a trigger moment, right? For me, it was a trigger moment where I had a friend who turned into a client. That's always a big red flag, right? And he started just buying up all of these hotels. He was in real estate, and we basically created everything for him, right? Like, the names, not the names, but the brand identity, the restaurant, how is it going to work, right? Like the flyers, the website, the branding, the whole thing, right? And he just kept going and going and going. And at some point, it came to the point where I had a project manager. She was pregnant. She said, hey, my cousin can fill in. So the cousin filled in. She didn't quite perform as well as I wanted her to. I had to let her go. The next day she went to this client, and she said, hey, by the way, all of this stuff, was done by interns, and all of the big ideas were my ideas. You should hire me. And he did. And I'm like, wait a minute. What is going on here? And so it is complete. I mean, this is like sitcom stuff, right? So it was complete drama. And at that moment, though, I really realized, oh my God, it's like, this is all, I created this whole zoo of things, right? And I just had it. So these months and years prior, where I looked at the agency world and I figured, you know what, is this the best way to serve clients? Are agencies all about ego and about their awards? And is it really all about us? And how does this, right? And how do you grow an agency, but yet have a super clear focus? All of this just bugged me, right? And then this one moment of complete like sitcom craziness where I'm like, I mean, it's
you can't make it up.
No, you can't make it up. And it's extremely stressful when you go through it, actually, because there are a lot of people involved and emotions involved. And then, of course, it's your work, and it's your it's your intellectual property. And of course, you got to keep feeding people, right? Because we had this person on a pretty high retainer, right? And suddenly the retainer is gone. And so it's like drama in every single compartment of an agency can have drama with. And at that moment, I decided, you know what, this is the moment where I actually could rethink everything, right? And so instead of keeping doing exactly what I did, which was being hungry for work and keep winning awards, I just sat back and I said, this is a time for me to say, okay, what am I going to do with this agency? And should it be an agency? And instead of me thinking about how big can this agency be, right? Which is really the big, that's what all agency owners think about. I was thinking more about what have I learned in those 12 years leading up to that? What have I learned? What can I provide to my clients in a much better, in a much faster way than all other agencies can do it? And then I said, you know what, I'm going to do a consultancy. We're going to be super small. We're going to be 2 people max, and I will never hire more than 1 person outside of myself.
Right? I will never hire more than 1 person ever.
That's exactly, and that's how I looked like. I just had a little bit more hair than him. But that's exactly what it was. I'm like, I'm going to have 1 person that does amazing work, like the design work, the brand identity work, naming, and all of that. And I'm going to be very strategy focused. And we're going to have 1 process and 1 pricing, and that works for everyone. And I don't do pitches, don't do proposals. I have 1 page, and that page I send to everyone who wants to work with me. And either they like our process and what we do and how quickly we do it with them, or not. And that's it. There's no more hustling. There's no more, new business channels. There's none of that. And people have to come to us if they want to work for us. And of course, that was rough the first year.
Was it?
Well,
Was it?
of course it is. Of course it
Well,
is,
you
right?
had probably had to have a whole gradient strategic game plan to, I don't even like to call it the word downside, just disrupt. You just disrupt it. You said,
Well,
I'm going back to basics. What's the most exciting, right?
yeah. I mean, at this point, I mean, it has been, and it is still to this day, it's the exact same thing, right? You know, if someone wants to work with me, there's a one pager, and these are the dollars, and this is how we work. And you know what? Clients love it, because usually they're doing this dog and pony show of like, here's our creative brief, here's exactly how it needs to go, but really they don't quite know. They look for guidance, right? But agencies are hungry and they just obey, and they're like, this is exactly what we're going to do. Here's our 500-page PowerPoint presentation, and please hire us, and by the way, hire us for everything else you need to. Right. And then it's really refreshing if I'm kind of like shrugging my shoulders and I'm like, look, I mean, you could do it your way, but here's my way.
Yeah.
Right.
Like, hell no. Like, this is why I'm so good at what I do. And this is all I'm going to focus on. Why do you think it's what do you call it? Scope creep? Or why do you think it is that agencies just take on this more and more and more, and it's not really their focus? They're not focused, or because the agency model is broken?
The agency model is broken, right? The idea is you have a lot of mouths to feed, and they're all full-time, right? And you want to grow because you want to be named agency of the year, or you want to be like, it's all about growth, and it's all about awards, and it's all about egos, right? And look, I mean, they're great people in agencies, and they're even great leaders in agencies, and I'm not dissing any of them. I just want to see all of them work on an individual basis and do their best work, where they can really shine and do it on an expert level. And that to me was what I really realized through this whole journey, is that I myself like to hire experts, right? So if my brand has problems, like after this podcast airs, I'm going to call you. I'm like, KJ, you got to help me. I said all these things. No, but it's like you have experts for everything, right? You want an expert, you want to pay extra for someone who's specialized, but they need to do it much better than anyone else, and they need to do it quicker. And that is how I, as an entrepreneur, like to surround myself with service providers. And so that to me is like, here's an agency of a couple hundred people, and they're owned by some global conglomerate, and it's all about the numbers, and it's all about stocks, and it's how can a startup come in and say, look, like, we really want to disrupt ourselves. I mean, how can they feel that this conglomerate, this ocean liner that really can't turn, right? It takes years for it to turn. How can that create that swift team that can just disrupt? I'm sure there's some agencies that can, but overall, I think it's really, really difficult based on that adequate, structure.
I think you're right. I think the agency model is broken. And, it's funny. That's why I have really never gone out for the awards or gone out for the industry accolades or anything like that. If anything, I think I'm probably like the black sheep of my industry. Right.
Yeah. It's, that's unusual. That's unusual. I mean, even now, every now and then, I do submit to an award show because it's just kind of fun. Or I'm like, hey, I don't have one of those, right? Like, I would like one of those. They look good, right? But it's not like it used to be, where it's this constant, show off. And another thing that I think is extremely interesting in the agency world and disrupting it is that all agencies talk to themselves. They all talk to other creatives. They read creative stuff. They talk to creatives. It's not like if they work with a company that is about I don't know, like some really boring B2B field, that they suddenly start really diving into that and going into that community and really being like, I always felt it is so weird, because I'm not as interested in reading, magazines about branding and going into websites about branding. I'm more interested in reading about business and economics and what's around the corner and what is happening, so that I can be more prepared to work with my clients.
Amen. Exactly. And that's what your clients come to you for. I'm the same way. Absolutely. People always say, do you know so-and-so? Have you heard of so-and-so? And I'm like, yeah, no, sorry. Well, they're in your field. Yeah, I don't know. I'm sorry.
Your top 3 competitors. Wait, I don't know. But it is a little bit like that, right? Where I think that if you and I'm not even sure if I disrupted branding agencies. I think I more disrupted my own trajectory, right? And how much, you know, how much you need to grow. You don't need to have huge staff. It doesn't need to be this conglomerate, right? It's more about, like your own trajectory. How much can you actually do while still having a life, and making a much better living and serving your clients really, really well. And in the end, I mean, that's what it's about. And that's why I say every single person in an agency should have that kind of mindset of like, how can I utilize what I'm really, really great at to in the best way. And I think, I mean, we're taping this now in December of 21. I mean, things are happening right now, not in agencies, everywhere. Everyone's quitting everything. And everyone realizes I should just do what I'm really great at. And you know what? I might even get paid more for it.
It's really true. I was just talking to another marketer and we were talking about this whole great resignation thing. But people, when you have times of disaster or cataclysmic, situations, people really start to question, is there more to this? Is there more to my life? Is there more to this work? Right? You had an epiphany based off of a time of trial by fire, right? Well, this is a huge trial by fire for the whole world. It's really changing things. What has this disruption for you or your agency done for you in terms of quality of life and everything you're doing as a creative?
I mean, it really changed everything. I mean, I'm not even, exaggerating here. I mean, before it used to be when you have a staff, of like 12, 15 people, you basically start work when they leave. Because you're busy managing all day long, and then afterwards you have to actually get back to clients and do finances and planning and this and that, right? It's this awkward size where you don't have enough managers, right? It's kind of like this in-between size, and that's the size where most small agencies are in. They're too small to have that VP level, that like managerial level, right? And so it was really late nights. I was the last one to get a raise. Right, because I mean, I had to make sure everyone else gets raises. So right, top talent. And I mean, everything. I mean, it's completely different. I mean, it's unbelievable how much it changed, right? Because all of first of all, business development is a thing of the past, right? Because people just come to me and I don't need that many clients, right? I mean, we're two people. If we have 3-4 clients at any given time, it's fantastic, right? And we're doing very well financially as an agent, even as an agency, right? Even if we would call ourselves an agency.
What do you call yourself? Is there a new name for your category? Okay,
it's a consultancy, right? I mean, I'm a consultant and it's a consultancy, and our annual income is as high as it was with the agency in the first years, right? And it's fantastic because it goes straight to us, right? I mean, there's nothing it's
amazing.
else.
Do you have a waiting list?
You know what? I was playing with this a little bit, but my type of clients, they go through a transformation and
they need it now.
Yeah, and I mean, they can't say, okay, you know what? I'm going to hold off of the merger because Mr. Fabian here has a wait list.
That's true, because people that need to transform, they need it now.
And
by the time they recognize they need it.
See, and it goes back to our conversation just now, right? About that there's this trigger moment. And for some of them, it is a very serious trigger moment, like an acquisition or a merger. But for some others, it is a personal moment of epiphany where they're like, oh my God, our company's purpose totally changed and we never did anything about it. Oh my God, we need to rebrand, right? But that's still, there's this urgency where I say, hey, why don't you wait for a month? So basically, I just say no to clients. And you know what I learned? That no is the most important thing in the agency world. Saying no is so relieving because it just opens up the path for the right yes. Right. So if I say no to an amazing job last night, someone wrote me, said, hey, here's an RFP, which for those not in the industry, it's a request for proposals. We would love to hear back from you, January 4th or something. I'm like, I don't know who you are. I don't know how I got on this list. I don't know. Am I going to spend years creating a proposal? So I wrote back, I'm like, hey, that's fantastic. I would love 20 minutes of your time to discuss this. And then she wrote back and she said, oh, sorry, at this point, we're not doing personal one-on-ones. And I wrote back,
This sounds so familiar.
Yeah. And I wrote back, I'm so sorry, but we don't engage in proposals if we don't have a personal, connection. And that was it. But I mean, it was a budget of $300,000.
Yeah.
I mean, you can only, every agency would say, screw it, let's just get a team on it. Right. And I think that's the difference. Like, it's easy for me to say no, and it's easy for me to just, be authentically myself and do what I feel, is the right thing to do. And guess what? These people all come back because there's someone who actually has the guts to do that. I remember Warner Brothers.
That. They actually love that. It's true.
Yeah, the way I got to work with Warner Brothers was very similar, where they sent out an RFP, but it was very personal, and they were super cool people. They were fantastic. And they reached out, and I said, I'm sorry, I don't do proposals, but I would love, but I looked through your RFP, and I just don't think that it's the best approach. I would have a different approach. I would love to talk to you about it. Guess what? 1 week later, I sit in the office of the VP, chit-chatting about, how I would solve his problem. I got hired on the spot. All the other agencies came in, had to do a dog and pony show. I already had the project. I never had to create a presentation. I never had to do anything like that. And that's not because I'm overly smart. Of course I am. No, that's not because I'm overly smart. That's because I liberated myself of having to take on every project and having to play that game, which in my eyes, the game is silly, it's unproductive, and it's not getting you to the place where you need to be. And so now I can openly just say that. And when you say, hey, I don't think that's the right approach, they listen because no one else would have the guts to do that.
Yeah. I think it's very interesting. You just hit on something that I don't even know if our listeners picked up, but it is this key approach, even the whole RFP system, even the dog and pony show. It's not even good for the clients or the prospective clients. And the ability to say no by a creative that's liberated, that can say, no, this is not the right process. You've been doing something it's antiquated. It's been around for 70 years, right? I mean, even the questions people ask agencies about how they're going to be able to handle their account is based off of 70-year-old agency models, right?
Yeah.
This RFP, this dog and pony show, this shit just doesn't work anymore. Hello.
No, that's absolutely mic drop. It doesn't work anymore, right? And I think for some listeners, especially the ones in the agency world, who might in the beginning have been like, this guy is full of crap, right? Like, what is he talking about? I think it slowly starts resonating, right? Because that is the kind of work that agencies spend a lot of time and resources on, and the only thing it is disappointing. It's disappointing for everyone on the team when they don't get that big deal after they worked weeks on a dog and pony show, right? It's disappointing when they get it because now they suddenly have to create all of these arms of their agency, which they didn't have before, and they need to figure this stuff out, and they need to become experts in an industry that they might know nothing about, or in a process that they might know nothing about, but the client dictated it. And the client is most probably going to be disappointed because they could have gotten better work if they would have just said, let's get a couple of experts in and really have them solve our problem.
Yes. So I think it's a responsibility on both sides. It's not just the agency, but it's for other companies to have the wake-up call that they really need to get the experts on board to solve their particular problems, instead of the whole dog and pony show that corporate has, and that small businesses adopt, I should say, to find the talent that they need.
Absolutely. And then the big excuse, is on the client side is always, but who's going to manage all of this, right? But it takes just as much to manage 3 or 4 experts, and I'm not saying vendors, I'm saying experts, right? Mm-hmm. Meaning experts know, and expert is also a horrible term, but a consultant, an expert, someone who knows what they're doing with their specific process or their specific craft. They know how to self-manage. They are going to give you timelines. They're going to say, here's what we're going to do when. And then the other person is going to say, here's what we're going to, all you have to do is combine the four and just sit back and have great work be done, rather than, struggling with the agency project manager, of what actually happens behind those scenes, right? So.
Yeah. I mean, have the companies have their own project manager to manage the experts, right? Then and the experts are going to do what they say they're going to do.
Yeah.
And then voila, that's what you have it. Were you, had you totally gone to your consultancy format when you were working with Warner Brothers?
Yeah. That's why I was able to do that. Otherwise, I would have totally bid, and I would have said, "Of course, we're gonna do a proposal," and I would have taken a week from of my team and all of that, right? And there's something that you said before, which also made me think about how the model is actually broken on more levels, because something that I always fight back against, and I think it's the right thing to do, but I'm unsure. But when we talk about disrupting, I'm never creating huge timelines. I just create check-in points, right? Like in the end, it's like, when do you need to launch? When do you need to relaunch your brand, or whatever is that big moment of truth, right? What is that end goal? And then in between, I give you a couple of key points, but I'm not going to create a Gantt chart or an Excel sheet with like every single, oh, are we going to have standing meetings, twice a week? And are we going to do all these things? Why? Yeah, it's such a, and startups would never think that way. Startups wouldn't have their, their standing calls and their spreadsheets. They're like, no, this needs to happen by then. What do you need from us? We're available for you. Let's go, right? You do your thing and you do it well. And there's no need for big timelines and schedules. I just really don't believe in that. And the minute that you have a timeline and a schedule, it will be disrupted within the
in the wrong way.
The very first thing you have on there is like, first presentation with the CEO. Guess what happens after that? Everything.
He can't make it.
Yeah, he can't make it. He looks at it and he's like, "What are we doing here?" He looks at it and he says, or she says, "I totally don't love that. Let's go somewhere else." And then everyone's gonna say, "Well, but we have all of these subsequent, stops in our timeline. What are we gonna do?" And it doesn't matter anymore at that point. Like, well, it doesn't matter. Let's go in a different direction. So yeah, there's a lot. Basically, to me, agencies waste a lot of time, and they burn out a lot of talent along the way. And I just don't think it needs to be that way.
What do you think they waste the most time on? Is it the project management?
Yeah, it's project management, it's meetings, calls, it's proposals, it's dog and pony shows, it's culture stuff. It's like things that you need to do or you think you need to do, right? Where else?
Now I'm supposed to, right? I think it's an entire cultural shift. It's a cultural shift. That stuff is not needed to create good work.
It is. And it's interesting that I did this 8-9 years ago, and now I feel like it's kind of becoming a real thing. It's like, I'm like, this is good. It's slowly catching on. And it may have taken a pandemic, but I think it is catching on, right? Yeah. I mean, I still had an office space where the two of us always came together with the consultancy. And now even I opened my eyes during the pandemic. I'm like, it's only the two of us in there, right? We might have a client come in every 2-3 weeks, but as a consultant, you fly around the world to do your workshops and you go to them. They don't come to you. It's global. It's not like, yeah, we're like the Los Angeles. No, we're not.
And nobody wants to be in person anymore. It's like, yeah. Don't shake my hand. Don't hug me. I'll be here virtually.
Well, that might change over time, right?
I hope so, because I like hugging people. But for right now, I was going to ask you a question, but I forgot. Like my goddaughter would say, words, man. Well, as far as this whole disruption goes, right? Like how have you been able to do your best work?
Well, that's a great question. and when I changed my model, I thought about that quite a bit. And I had help of a gentleman called David Baker. He's also an author. He wrote some amazing books. The Business of Expertise is his latest. He's a great guy. I hired him for $10,000. That was 9 years ago. For $10,000 to come in for one day and help me reposition my agency into the consultancy that I wanted to become. And that was a huge amount of money for a day. And so here's the thing. So David did a really good job. And I'm still in touch with him, and he's fantastic. But the best lesson that I learned was that I was willing to pay $10,000 for one day of an expert who did his job with me, right? Because I trusted him. And so that actually immediately translated into my business model. And that also goes back to how I do my best work. When I do brand strategy with clients now, before it used to be, tons of meetings, weeks and weeks of work, presentation of the strategy, this and this, here are different directions, right? Where your company could go, where the brand could build, blah, 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 SWOT analysis, all of that. Now, guess what it is? It's a one-day session and it's $12,000. And I do one almost every week now. And it is so amazing to do it, because I only do these workshops if the founder, co-founder, or CEO are part of it. That's in companies that are under, like, let's say 500 or 1,000 people, right? Once you talk with the Honeywells and the Marriotts of the world, then it's the project, right? Like, who is the owner, who is the project lead, and but because of that, I'm basically doing more therapy than I do strategy, because I just get it out of them over 8 hours. And guess what? I create consensus during 8 hours. And so at the end of the 8 hours, we've got their positioning nailed, their mission nailed, their vision for the next 5 years. We got the personality of the brand. We've got their values. I mean, literally, we equip HR to do culture. We equip marketing to go market. And we equip the entire leadership to be on the same page and have one voice, right, moving forward. And there's no other way this could happen unless you have these people take that amount of time out. And I think because the cost for one day is high enough that people care, they actually become part of it, right? Like, they actually want to become part of it. So it's this really interesting thing with how I structured this day, that it actually works so well. And that's where I do my best work. I mean, that's where I feel like when I leave those days, and it is exhausting. I mean, now doing Zoom days, right? Doing our times right now, it's over 2 half days, right? So 4 hours one day, 4 hours the next day, which works really, really well. But it's exhausting, right? I mean, it's really exhausting. But afterwards, you just feel like you made a huge impact in the trajectory of the business, and you just equipped so many teams and people with so much knowledge. It's really awesome. So that's what I love doing, and that's when I feel like I do my best work.
Well, you're really dealing with the goal makers and the visionaries of the company. They're the ones that can make things happen, and everything filters down from their vision, their goals, their purpose, right? For why they're doing things. So you do this 10-hour day or this all day thing. Is there follow-up after that? Like, you have to deliver something to them, or that's it?
All I deliver is a very, very automatically generated PDF that basically shows everything that we already fill out during the day to them. So there's no more work after that, really, in that sense. And very often that's the last time that I see these clients, because I say, look, unless you need the other 2 things on my PDF, unless you need to change your name or you need to now rethink your identity, otherwise that's it. And let's connect on LinkedIn, and let's be friends, and that's it.
Let's be friends.
And you know what?
My new friends.
It is really, really amazing, right? Because especially after where I came from with the agency, I kind of thought, oh my God, you can't be friends with CEOs and like all of this. You shouldn't do business with friends and all of this. And now it's just so liberating, because I work with the most amazing people, right? I mean, people that are so driven, and I mean, they're running companies, huge companies, right? And spending 8 hours with them is just personally extremely satisfying, gratifying, right? I mean, there's a lot of that. And then again, just that idea that you help them on their path to become a better brand, right? A more beloved, more, admired brand, is tons of fun. And so that's very different from me sitting in my office at 10 p.m., not having gotten a raise in a while, and I run the business, right? And someone says, I'm pregnant. Someone says, I'm quitting. Someone says, my uncle in Australia, I need to go there, whatever it is, right? One client says, hey, your biggest project is now on hold for 3 months. And it's like all this stuff where you're just like losing hair. Somehow I haven't, I don't know how, but it's surely turned gray. And now it's just very different, right? Because I've got a workshop like this here and there, like we transform these sprints. It's all on my exact, timeline. And it's easy. It's easy.
That's awesome.
It's hard work, but it's easy.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. I love it. And who are these early adopters of this type of, like, for instance, Warner Brothers, right? They pivoted really quickly. How would you, and they're not small, right? Like, so they're kind of an early adopter of this methodology. Like, hey, we have this dog and pony show going on, but wait, we need this. Who are the early adopters? How would you describe them?
Well, I think the early adopters are the people in charge that see that someone is doing something differently, and they have the gut to actually do it differently. And that is fascinating to them, because that's how they run their business. That's how, right? I mean, they disrupt. And so all of these service providers, these vendors, right? They're not experts. They're not even partners. They're just vendors, right? And it sucks just as much for the client to have to go through all of this. And when suddenly someone actually speaks up and says, hey, I'm going to pull the brake on what you're doing over there. If you want to come on board, I'm going to show you how we can do that. That is extremely fascinating, right?
It's liberating for them.
It's liberating. It's intriguing, right? And that's exactly what happened, right? It just said, well, I want to learn more about this. Would it be an inconvenience for you to come to the Warner Brothers studio lot and sit with the VP and talk about this, right? I mean, you would have never, as an agency, even gotten that,
no,
right?
You wouldn't even gotten in for that. Yeah.
And I love that story, because for me, that was kind of like, okay, that idea of saying no, or that idea of speaking your mind, or that email that I sent last night to that $300,000 RFP, where I said, sorry, I'm not going to do this with you because I need to talk to a human person before we do any work, right? And of course, I'm never going to do a proposal, but then I would tell her, well, this is what we do, and here's a one-pager. And the amazing thing is how quickly people change, right? Where they come of like, we need this 30-page proposal, it needs to be done then, and it's this rigid thing, right? And then when they talk to someone like me, it becomes a little bit more personable. It kind of like starts making sense. They start talking internally. They're like, there's this weird guy, but he's kind of like, it makes sense. Should we? And then they open it up more and more. And then in the end, all the other agencies just don't exist anymore. And I'm not saying that this happens every single time, right? It goes back to your question of who are these people, right? If it is a very corporate environment, it happens less and less, right? But Warner Brothers, it wasn't Warner Brothers, the company. It was a subdivision, of course, right? And within that subdivision, the person who was the head of that, he was intrigued. And I think that's what it takes. And that's why I work very, very well with founder CEOs, right? People that run their business, but they also have that founder, disruption element in them, where they just seek that. They're like, this is different. Different could be good. Let's talk.
Different is good. I was interviewing Jennifer Murphy. She's the CMO of Five9, this big cloud giant. And, one of the things that we were talking about is the whole disruption in the customer experience, right? And this whole thing of stifling the dog and pony show, the customer experience, people are no longer going to want that. And that's not just in a B2C market. It's in this B2B market. It is with the leaders of the companies. They want authenticity. They want people to tell them what to do. They admire that, right? It's liberating for them. They don't want yes men.
Exactly. And on that same note, I'm starting another company because it's just been well,
You are a glutton for punishment. What is
I'm starting another company. And because of that, I need things like company insurance, which of course my insurance for my company, I had since, I don't know, 2000, whatever, 9 or whatever, right? Like, so I haven't even, so on LinkedIn verbatim last night, I posted the following. I said, it's been a while since I formally started a business, but here I go again. What's a trusted new digital forward, in bracket, read user-oriented brand in the insurance space for small businesses and startups that you came to trust? So the thing is,
user oriented,
right?
User experience.
Do I want to call State Farm? Do I want to call any of them? No, I want to see who are the shakers, who are the ones that think they can do it differently, who are the ones that say, oh, you're a startup, you don't need to have all of this stuff, just click here, you're going to be covered for your basis, right? And so I think just by me putting this out there, where I immediately feel like, oh, I need something that feels like it's old and antiquated and it should have been disrupted, I would immediately first ask, well, has it been disrupted? And if so, can I start being a part of that? Because insurance sucks, just like agencies suck, just like so many things suck, right? And I'm sure someone disrupted it. So who was it? And I would love to jump on that bandwagon.
That's the motto after this whole pandemic, endemic. It's like, this sucks. We're going to change it. But you started a little earlier.
Absolutely. And people do that, right? I mean, all these people start their own things now, and they have guts, because guess what? They don't have that much to lose, right? They might have already lost their job. And at this point, they can drive an Uber during the day. And then in the evening, do the stuff, work on a big project to take over whatever industry.
Yeah.
And people are. I mean, there are entrepreneurs that are driving Ubers just to get by.
Yep.
And they are insanely smart people and smart minds, but they are so, and it comes back to that idea of determination, right? They're so determined and they have so much perseverance that they just say, whatever it takes, I don't care. I need to make sure I put food on the table. But besides that, I'm going to go follow my dream.
Hell yeah. I love amazing. This. This is for all you out there, the courageous, the determined, those that persevere. This podcast is for you. Were you always courageous and determined and had perseverance? What were you like growing up?
Well, I mean, when you think about a kid that has determination and perseverance, that doesn't paint a really good picture. But I sure was that kid.
Were you?
Yeah. I was a complete pest. Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Oh, I can see that about you.
Oh, yeah, totally. Oh, I was a troublemaker all the way into my 20s. And then I got extremely, I think that whole like troublemaking and ego and being like at the forefront and the center of everything, right? That then transformed into really wanting to become one of the best in what I do professionally, right? It was a perfect kind of like, it wasn't so much about me being the star in my clique or in my school or in my whatever, right? It was more about, okay, so how do I now win most awards and how do I become that person?
I can totally see you as a young man and a little boy. I can totally see you that. And it's so very Austrian of you.
It's very Austrian of me. And I'm not sure that we want to paint that picture for anyone. So I'm going to move on very quickly. But I think that, like once I got into my 30s, that's when everything shifts, right? That's when suddenly you start seeing yourself and you're like, are your priorities correct? Right. And that doesn't mean you need to start a family and are you married or not, but it's really professionally, are my priorities correct? Is what I'm doing, is that where I want to be? And so I think that's where my thinking started with, like how do, is it really all about awards? Like what is this about?
You know what I really love about this, Fabian, is it's like you're on purpose in your life.
There's a good book with that title too. Yeah, I think purpose these days gets a really bad rap because it has to be about giving back to society at all times, right? And I think,
but what's your purpose on purpose? What's your purpose? That's what drives you, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And I think, I mean, for me personally, my purpose is to just create better companies faster. Like that's really it, right? And I can do it through my means, which are very brand oriented, right? But I love when I come out of these sessions, or when we do a brand transformation, like everything looks new, and the voice is different, and the purpose is deeper, right? So my purpose is to give brands purpose, right? I mean, in a way, that's what it is, right? And I think, if I would write big checks to some nonprofits, which of course I also love doing, but like, if that is your purpose in life, you need to be more directly affected by that, right? You need to, like, I feel if I have a workshop and I make a lot of money, and at the end of the day I'm having a martini and I'm like, good for me, right? That's one way of seeing it. But the other way of seeing it is me actually still having a martini, but me sitting back and saying, you know what, this was a 900 people company. We just instilled amazing values. We just pushed leadership to have more purpose, to be a more purposeful company. We just created all of these things. And how over the next 5 years will that actually have a trigger effect on people's purpose, on people's salary? So
that's your purpose.
That's my purpose. Yeah.
And
but it took me a while
faster, and you disrupted your whole agency so you could be on your purpose. That is beautiful.
Right. Yeah.
That's kick ass.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
didn't come overnight.
So what do you do outside of, driving purpose faster for companies, right? What do you do? Do you have any crazy passions, or are you just
I keep pushing my own purpose further. Well, I am one of those people that I talked about before. I'm big into music. I absolutely love music. I've got like 1,300 or 1,600 records. I'm part of a production duo. We do music on the side. But during the pandemic, I realized that the way that people store their vinyl, their records, hasn't been disrupted in 100 years, and I'm ready to disrupt it. So literally over the pandemic, over the last year, I hired a designer who worked for Frank Gehry, and he also did engineering for Boeing. And I paid him to co-create this new product. And so I'm gonna launch it hopefully in January. And it's a whole new company. I know nothing about product. I know nothing about D2C. I know enough because I work with clients, right? But so the fun thing with that company is that I now have to perform what I usually perform on companies on myself, right? So I have to launch this brand perfectly. It has to have the right story, the most amazing brand identity. It has to connect immediately with the audience. It has to have amazing values. It has to have all of that stuff. And so it is absolutely exhilarating. And that's what so I guess when you ask me, what do I do for fun? Right now, that's what I do for fun, but it turns into a business very, very quickly. So I'm like running 2 shifts right now. That's
amazing. Okay. I can't wait to hear about that in the new world. Right.
Yeah.
And I call it the new world. I'm not even saying Happy New Year. It's like Happy New World next year.
It's so true. I think that something amazing will come out of all of this pain and sorrow and longing and everything that we've been through as mankind, right? I think, and I'm not glad that it happened, right? I don't want anyone to mess up my words here, but I think that there's going to be, I think that just people are going to experience their lives in much better ways, right? With service providers, with hospitals, with brands, with everything. I think that there's so much innovation that's going to come out of these dark times, of people that really care. Kind of like how I do my little business, because I've got 1,600 records, and I think something needs to be done for them to be seen better or to be showcased better, whatever, right? And so it's going to come not from corporations, but it's going to come from people who are like you, right? Who say, hey, I have that shared interest and I want to do something about it. I think good stuff is going to come abound. And I sure hope that's
I agree with you. I was talking to another disruptor and he said, this is the creator economy. This is what's come out of COVID. You have just attested to that. Yeah. And I wouldn't expect anything less for you to be doing something like being an overachiever and now starting another company. So
well, wish me luck.
That's your crazy passion. Yeah, no, I don't wish luck to people. I'm going to wish you good intentions because I know you'll make it happen.
Thank you. And I appreciate saying that about luck, because I actually am pretty, allergic against the idea of, oh my God,
luck comes
so
from
lucky.
having balls, being determined, and being persevering, right?
And that's exactly what it is, right? It's never, sure, there's always a little bit of luck, but you ask for it and you showcase that you are ready for that luck, right? So there's a lot of hard work behind all of that.
A lot of hard work behind it. That's
know it. I know you know it.
Oh,
so.
And all disruptors know it.
Yeah.
So how do people get a hold of you? How do they find you? How do they find out more about you?
They can go to FINIEN.com. That's my brand consultancy, not to be mistaken.
Okay, what does it mean?
Agency.
What does Finian mean?
Of course, you had to ask that. So Finian, so this was huge for us, right? Because here we are creating a consultancy that is specialized in naming, right, next to strategy and identity. And the name's got to be better, really good. We got to have the .com. We don't want to have to buy it. It's this whole thing. It has to be pronounceable, easy, and all of this stuff. So Finian came from 3 words, and those 3 words really describe perfectly what we do. On the one hand, Finians in Latin means compass, right? So it means setting the direction, which is the first phase, which is really brand strategy, right? Like we set the direction for a brand. Then in Polynesian, Finian means seed, right? So it's like you put in the seed. So first you set the direction, then you plant the seed, which is for us giving a name or an identity. And then in French, which is the one that most people know, fini means, to complete, to finish something. So that's our process. So at the end of it, we set you up with great partners, right? And that's
Start,
it. That's
change, stop, full circle.
That's exactly it. So that's where Finian came from. Those were kind of like our inspirational words in different languages. And then we created the story around it. And I think it's a good story. And I love it because when people ask Finian, everyone says, what does it mean? Because it's so weird, right? And there's Fabian and Finian. People call me Finian sometimes.
Like, what is this?
Right?
Is this having to do with finance? But he's in branding.
Yeah, and then I can basically pitch them our entire philosophy and our process and
all
what
in one fell swoop.
all in one quick elevator. Like, yeah, this is what it means. And then they're like, oh, this is interesting. We should talk more. I'm like, good.
See, a true testament of your brilliance. So again, how do they find you?
Yeah, so Finian.com is a great place. They can absolutely follow me on Instagram. I'm super active there. They can connect with me on LinkedIn if they can spell my name, Fabian Geyrhalter. It's a little complicated, but it's on the show. And yeah, if they're intrigued and if they're into records and collecting, they can go to toneoptic.com, which is the very first time I was able to drop this because it's literally just launched 3 days ago. So yeah, they can.
That's exciting. Okay, how do you spell it?
Tone, like music tone, and
tone,
optic, like optic,
toneoptic.com.
Because it's
super cool.
Doing something very visual and it's about music and it allows us to expand if ever we wish to. And yeah,
I'm in. I'm going.
All right. Perfect. I'll see you because you're going to be visitor number 4 or something, right?
Yes.
It's when you start a company, your analytics are so depressive. You're like, what? Really?
Visitor number 4. That's pretty significant. It's like Google employee number 10.
Yeah, no, I was exaggerating, but yeah, I do hope to be in touch there and wherever else and everyone else would love to hear your thoughts.
Thank you, Fabian.
It was
and
such
guys,
a great
if you learned something, you want to disrupt your agency, or you just want to get aboard on the creator economy, whether you're a company or whether you're a creator, reach out to Fabian here. And Fabian, thank you so much.
My pleasure.
And thank you, everybody, for listening to Disruption Interruption, where we transform lives, change consumer behavior, alter economics, and never accept the status quo. Ciao for now.
Because we live in a highly litigious society, with America being one of the top litigious countries in the world, here's our legal disclaimer. This information is not intended to be a substitute for professional public relations or legal advice. Do not disregard seeking professional legal, healthcare, or financial advice, or delay seeking professional PR or legal advice because of something you have heard here. Contact an attorney to obtain advice on any particular legal situation or problem. Use of this podcast or our website or any of its social media or email links do not create an agency-client relationship between Johto PR and the user.